This is We the Sales Engineers Podcast, show 89. What's going on, SC Nation? The new year is right around the corner, so I really wanted to wish you guys a great new year. Hopefully, one full of great achievements and big goals that you actually can strive for. Thanks for choosing to spend your time with me, and especially for those who've been doing this for a while. If you just found me, welcome. My name is Ramzi Majaba. I'm a sales engineer out of Ottawa, Canada, and I'm running this website / podcast / YouTube videos, We the Sales Engineers. Thank you guys for being here. So I've been working with many individuals on one-on-one basis, those who are looking to make the jump from just being an engineer or any sort of non-sales engineer role into the SE world over the last year. I've been helping others in other things, but these are the folks that I worked with the most. So I've been helping them with resumes, demos, the interview process. So instead of doing that on a best effort one-on-one basis, I wanted to formalize the process a little bit. So I'm launching a course in the new year, all dedicated to taking someone who's not an SE and helping them achieve their goal of becoming one. I'm calling that the road to sales engineering. I should have put in some drum rolls. The road to sales engineering. If this is something that's interesting to you, please reach out to me. The best place would be on my email, ramsey@wetheSalesEngineers.com. So I will be taking 20 students for live sessions. They might be more for pre-recorded sessions. I haven't decided yet, but it's first come, first served. So if that's something that's interesting to you, you feel you're ready to make the jump, you have the experience, reach out to me. If you don't have the experience, I will let you know. You won't have to spend any money if I feel like you need a little bit more experience before becoming a sales engineer. So now to our guest. So he's been an analyst, he's been a consultant, a sales engineer, and now he's a SE manager at Slack. He's also part of the Sales Engineers of New York, which is a great team if you've never heard of them. They do quarterly or bi-quarterly meetups where they provide a lot of information to their attendees based in New York. And this gentleman's name is Eric Glick. It was really fun talking to him. He's so down to earth. It was like two friends having a chat, although we've never met before. We've talked through Slack a little bit. And I do talk about Slack today. It's not a paid endorsement by any means. I do enjoy using their product. I use it within the SENY community, so it's been great, and I might be looking into using it in other ways, like at home. So there's a lot of resources that are mentioned today. They're all on the show notes at wetheSalesEngineers.com/show89. And quick tip of the day: if your company offers career coaching, make sure you take advantage of that. Eric did. And we will talk about that a little bit later. If they don't offer it and you think you can afford it, I'm not sure how much it costs, but look into that. Take advantage of that too. That'll be one of the topics of conversations for today. So let's just jump into it. Good morning, Eric. How you doing?
Good morning, Ramsey. I'm doing very well. Thank you so much for having me on the podcast. Really excited to be here.
It is my pleasure. Thank you for taking the time. I know this is usually a vacation time or a holiday time, so I appreciate you taking the time early on a Monday morning. Let's talk a little bit about you. Who are you and why are you on the show?
Yeah, so I'll give you the brief background on who I am. So my name's Eric Glick. I currently lead the Enterprise Solutions Engineering team at Slack. To catch you up on kind of how I got here, so started my career in management consulting. Spent 3 years at Deloitte. From there, had stints in corporate analytics, corporate finance, before making my way into sales engineering. And been working in sales engineering for about 6-7 years now, and have been at Slack for 2 of those.
So you didn't study engineering, you studied business, and then it's amazing how many people who study business end up loving sales engineering. I'm assuming you're loving it since you're here. So
I am. Yeah, it's true. I graduated with a degree in finance. I graduated in 2008, and and really had a full intentions of going into banking or finance. And at that point in time, it wasn't really the best time to get into finance with, Lehman Brothers going down, Bear Stearns turning over. So I ended up getting a job at Deloitte in management consulting, which was a great place to start for me. But yeah, my background is largely non-technical.
So you graduated at the perfect time, basically, to get into sales engineering.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Pretty tight labor markets at that time.
Yeah.
But I think ultimately landed in a pretty good spot.
Yeah. So you graduated in 2008,
I
almost?
did. Yeah.
Yes. I graduated in 2009, had the same situation. I studied engineering, but then like no, there aren't any jobs even for engineering. So I'm glad you were able to get your career started somehow, and now you're here. All right. So you said you're a lead. What does that mean?
Yeah, so I actually manage our enterprise and mid-market SE teams over at Slack.
Okay.
So when I started at Slack 2 years ago, I was the second large enterprise SE, which focuses on our strategic accounts.
Okay.
Um, from there, we've seen the team grow from 4 people to 16.
Nice.
So with that, and that's just in New York City. So with that, there was a lot of opportunity for me to take on this new role, which I took on back in the summer.
So you have 16 SEs in New York City.
We have 16 SEs in New York City, and then half of them report up to our director, our East
Okay.
Coast director, and then the other half are on my team.
Okay. That's interesting. I haven't seen so many SEs for one company in one spot.
Yeah, it's interesting, especially given Slack, our product, really
Yeah.
helps facilitate a lot of this kind of like inter-office communication. But it is something that we've really done. So we have built hubs in New York and San Francisco. We're starting to build out a little bit in Denver, and then we have London, Dublin, Australia, and Japan.
Nice. So I am curious. Like I did mention that I might ask you this question, and I'm going to start with it early on. So most of my career, I've worked with business to business, right? Uh, types of selling. For Slack, you are business to business, correct? You're selling to
We
businesses,
are.
but
Yep.
there is an option for people to go in and get their own Slack account and just use it. How do you see that affecting your sales process, considering a lot of people already know what Slack is, they know how to use it? Does it make it easier? Does it make it harder? I'm curious
Yeah,
about
I
that.
guess that's a good question. Do you think that a lot of people know what Slack is at this point?
A lot more
Or do you
than
think it's worth giving a little bit of a background on it?
let's give it a little bit of background. I'm just saying a lot more. Like I'm in test and measurement, and nobody knows what it is, and they don't have, and nobody has access to download any of our products ahead of time and use it. But yeah, let's go ahead and give people who don't know, because it's useful for almost anybody who's listening on the podcast and not listening.
It is, yeah. I think Slack can be used by
Plug
anybody.
it. Let's plug it.
Let's plug it.
Yeah.
So fundamentally, I think when we talk about Slack, we look at it just replacing email in a lot of situations, specifically inside of large companies, which is primarily where I'm focused. So if you think about it, within Slack, emails are or conversations are organized into topic-based channels. So this is a place where people, data, and applications all come together in one place. If you contrast that with kind of an email-based world, email is very closed off. It doesn't really integrate with the tools that you use to get work done, whether it's your CRM, your HR system, your project management tools. And so Slack has really created this new way of working that again brings together your people, your data, your applications all in one place.
Okay. All right. So hopefully that gives the people an idea of what it is. But like I can use it right now with my wife,
Yep.
right?
And you
We'll have
should. And I do too.
You do too. I haven't used it yet. Uh, it might be on the to-do list. We'll figure that out as we go along. Maybe you'll sell me on it later.
well, yeah, I'll talk a little bit about the B2C market. So it's interesting, right? Like I use it for myself. Me and some of my friends, we've migrated over to Slack, where we used to use kind of a combination of email and GChat.
Okay.
So it's really helped us organize a lot of our conversations. So whether we're planning a trip together with ourselves and our significant others, or we're talking about music, or we're talking about work, we break those down into different channels, and it creates just a more streamlined and efficient way to have those conversations, as opposed to just very long, lengthy email threads that just get pretty unwieldy.
Okay. Just to contrast, like this is not a plug. Like we're not the purpose of this podcast is not to plug Slack, but I do want to
Yep.
understand this just to have a better idea. So I use WhatsApp,
Yep.
and I have groups like with my family, with my brother, or whatever, and everything I want to talk to my brother about is on that same thing, the same group. What you're saying is that I can break that group into different channels, and that way, if someone, like if I want to talk about basketball, I don't have to put it on the group with a bunch of other like music topics or whatever. I'll have its own channel talk about basketball. There's another channel for music. There's another channel with like wife driving me crazy. I hope she's not listening to this. That sort of thing, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. So you can do it that way. So like my wife and I will do it the same way, where we have a channel where we just discuss things that are happening with our kids. If we're going on vacation, we have a vacation channel so we can organize, where we're staying, what restaurants we want to go to, and so again, it's just a much easier way. I mean, if you think about kind of the way that your brain works, when you see one of these channels lights up and it's my wife's name dash vacation,
Yeah.
I'll get a little more excited than if it's, my wife's name dash house chores and she's telling me I need to do some stuff when I get home.
So that's a good thing for you, but bad thing for her because now you can ignore specific topics.
Perhaps.
So now that people have a good view of what it is, I understand it better actually because I didn't think about it that way. Now that people actually use it on their own, does that make your job easier or harder to consult with them?
Yeah, it's a good question, and I think the answer to that is a little bit of both, right? Because at face value, what Slack looks like is just another communication and chat platform, like you mentioned, WhatsApp.
Yep.
So a lot of people will look at and say, okay, this looks like maybe a slightly better version of WhatsApp. So I think the B2C and also just the free product that we put out there is great because it builds a lot of awareness. But it also does become challenging for myself and my team because when we get in, our job is to really show the value of Slack, and it's not the chat portion, right? The chat is, you can chat anywhere. The
Yeah.
real power of Slack is going to be in the platform side and the integrations. And a lot of folks who are in kind of that B2C or that free version aren't really leveraging it that much. So there's a lot of education that we need to do upfront as a result of that. But again, I think it is a net positive just because most people that do download and use Slack, whether it's with their wife, with their kids' soccer team, or for their company, tend to like it. So it puts us in a pretty good spot. And then our role really is to help them understand how they can get maximum value out of it, which is integrating it with the tools and the processes that they have internally at their companies.
Okay. So what consumers use is a very small portion of that, and there's a lot that goes around behind it that they can be using it to like leverage their stuff, basically.
Yeah,
Stuff being a technical
exactly.
term.
Yeah, and it's not really that we limit it too much. So on the free version, you're limited to 10 integrations. But honestly, you'll find that a lot of people who use it for free are using very, very few. Maybe they have an integration that allows them to pull people so that they can get answers to questions that they're throwing out there. But they're definitely not using it in what we would consider a mature way.
Okay.
So as they move up to the paid versions, that's really what we want to help them understand is how they can unlock that value and integrate it with their tools and really change the way that they work.
All right. So I do want to clarify something. We just talked about B2B and B2C. Do you want to take a second just to explain what those stand for and the differences for those who don't know?
Yeah, sure. So yeah, B2C would just be business to consumer, and then B2B business to business. And again, where the sales team definitely focuses is on that B2B market. So whether it's 5-person companies to 10-person companies, or for my team specifically, looking at companies that have thousands of individuals.
Okay. Cool. All right. So I got that out of the way because I've always been curious. Like our friend Sam Pena, he works for Pluralsight. There's a bunch of people who have that option of, I can go in. I already have a subscription with Pluralsight, and yet
Mhm.
he has to take the time to sell it to different companies. What's the difference? How does it make it better? How does it make it worse? So at least it was. Hopefully, it's useful for others listening to the podcast. This was useful for me at least.
Yeah, and one last thing on that, like I think it's been interesting to see just the SaaS market in general because there are a lot of freemium
Yep.
products, right?
Yep.
There's companies like Dropbox, and even if you look at Google Drive and Gmail, like those are free services that create some awareness, but there's very large companies that use it. And I think it just speaks to, a change in the way that companies are bringing in technology today,
Yep.
that, we see it a lot where there's just this massive groundswell of people who have used Slack in the past, really have enjoyed it, got a lot of value out of it, and now want to bring it in and replace tools that they have internally like Skype or GChat with Slack, because they have seen the value in the past without anyone really going out of their way to sell it to them.
Yeah. Nice. That's good. That's a good thing to have. Like, that's a good marketing ploy versus you having to do all the work. At least there's awareness. So
Yeah,
for
and now, I think companies that create really good products are the companies that are winning out there in the market. So, the proof is in the pudding. If people use it and like it, then they're going to bring it into their companies.
yeah, I haven't. So we don't use Slack in my team, but I know my company uses Slack with their engineers, and I haven't met a single engineering team who hasn't used Slack at some point or doesn't use it. Again, not an endorsement. Well, kind of an endorsement. It's not a paid endorsement.
Yeah. And it's true. That's really where I think Slack started, was with a lot of technical folks. And part of the reason is because in the past, traditionally, it was challenging to integrate Slack with all of your tools. But developers and engineers, obviously being pretty technically minded, were able to run with that. So they saw the value the quickest. I think now, as our platform starts to mature, we're making it easier for salespeople, for lawyers, for people in finance to start integrating it with their tools, and then they're starting to unlock that value much more quickly.
So I'm gonna say something. We can edit it out later if you don't want. But would you like to come on like my YouTube channel and show how sales engineers can use Slack as part of their environment? Would that be beneficial for you?
I would love to. Yeah, I've
Yeah.
actually. So you just mentioned Sam Pena. I was lucky enough to go out for Pluralsight's SE Global offsite
Okay.
and talk a little bit about how at least our sales engineers at Slack use Slack. So yeah, I'm definitely pretty passionate about that. Would love
Okay.
to
Yeah.
do that.
Let's do that, because even if they don't pay for it, they might use it, and at some point they might pay for it if
Yeah.
they can convince their management to do that. All right. So let's get back to the topic that we actually wanted to discuss today. Um, so you moved from individual contributor when there were 4 SEs, and now you're managing a team. Did you want to? I've talked to many people who never wanted to make that move and ended up making that move. They were forced into it. I don't know what your situation is. Were you forced into becoming a manager, or did you want that role?
So no, I definitely wanted it, and it's something that I kind of knew just based on what I wanted to get out of my career, where I saw my career going long term. It was definitely the next step for me. Um, I did have some prior management experience. So I mentioned earlier that my second role, I worked in corporate finance, and I started as a senior analyst and eventually got promoted after a year to manage our FP&A team that at that time was pretty small. But it gave me some visibility into what people management really looks like. So I had some experience, and then coming into this role, especially at Slack, I really was just waiting for the right time
Right.
to make the jump. And for me, that just meant, being at the right company, and probably more importantly, having the right support system around me. So during my time at Slack, not only did we grow, but we also grew the SE leadership team and just brought in some incredible folks from a number of different organizations who were really in place before I got promoted. And just I've had really strong relationships with them, really respected them, and knew that me moving into this role would just be an incredible opportunity to learn from them, but also share some of my experience and my knowledge with those new 12 folks that I mentioned we had grown on the East Coast.
Right.
So for me, it just seemed like perfect timing. It was definitely something that I was really interested in.
How did you prepare to become a manager? All right. Maybe let me take a step back. Like, did you tell your management team that this is what you want, or like did you just miraculously become a? It's a leading question. Did you miraculously become a SE manager?
So I think the first thing that I did was really just sit down and think about, where I saw my career going. I've worked with a career coach for about the past year. I actually got introduced to one while I was at Slack through this company called BetterUp that matches you with career coaches. And through that, we took a lot of time just to think about, like, my journey, where I've come from and where I wanted to go. And that made it pretty clear that this was the right step in that direction, was to move into a leadership role within the SE organization. And then talk to just a lot of people. So mentors and other folks that I know who have made the jump, had a lot of conversations with them. And then once I did that, really made up my mind that this was exactly what I wanted to do. Then I went and had the conversation with my manager and some of our leadership team. Luckily, they were incredibly supportive of me making this move. And then I did go through, for really any promotion at Slack, you go through a pretty formalized process that includes interviewing again and going through that. So I did have to go through all of those steps as well.
Okay. You mentioned the career coach. What was the company called? I want to put a link to it in the show notes.
Yeah, so the company's called BetterUp. The website's betterup.co.
Okay.
And usually they partner with mostly companies. So companies who want to provide career coaching to their employees can go through that.
So you didn't seek that out. Slack provided that for you.
They did. Yeah, actually, it was my manager at the time ended up offering that up to me. I had never heard of it. I had never worked with a career coach before. And now it's indispensable. I mean, it's just been incredibly helpful for me.
Yeah. It's amazing how we expect people like us to go through life without a coach, where Tiger Woods, who was at the top of his game, still had a coach. Michael Jordan had a coach. I don't understand that, but hey, I can complain about it all day. No one's going to listen. Well, at least your company is listening, so that's good.
We are.
So one thing that people talk about, if you were like an individual contributor with a bunch of colleagues, and then got promoted to become their manager, right? How did the team that now reports to you deal with that? Were they okay with it? How did you make sure that they're going to be okay with it? Actually, that's a better question.
Yeah, and it's really important too. I think one of the things that I saw when I moved in this role was, I mentioned that there were so many new folks. So actually, on my team, there was only one person who had been there for longer than I had been at the company.
Okay.
And we just had a really good relationship. I mean, we had been working together for 2 years, had a really strong working relationship. So, I think the big thing for me was, one, just once I got in the role, to just have a really open conversation, right? Sometimes it may be a little bit strange or awkward if you go ahead and you end up being the manager for someone that you used to work side by side with. But I think the most important thing is just to let them know that, like, your role is to make them successful, right? And what I wanted to do when I first took over this role was understand what success looked like for everyone on my team, because it's different, right? Some
Yep.
people have families and success is just getting home at 5 o'clock so they can eat dinner with their kids. So for some people, it's getting promoted as fast as possible. So having those really open conversations right in the beginning, I think really helped us, create an even stronger relationship, but also create a lot of mutual respect and trust as we were in these new roles.
So I've worked with two different kinds of managers: managers who ask you what you want, and managers who tell you what they want. I've always enjoyed working with the ones who ask you what, because they end up getting what they want too out of me, but at least I'm happier doing it, versus the ones who tell me, this is what I need from you, and with no regards to what I want. I need you to be a salesperson. I don't want to be a salesperson. Well, this is what I want. All right.
Yeah. Well, I think that's one of the things that I took, in making the transition into leadership is, I've been lucky, especially in my sales engineering career, to work with some incredible managers at every company that I've been at, really. And I think when I started to think about moving into this role, I thought about, what were those key things that my managers did that I really appreciated, and I kind of boiled it down to a couple specific things. And one of them was just taking an interest in me and really understanding what I wanted out of the role, because at the end of the day, we work hard for our companies, but you are trying to get something back from them, right? It
Yeah.
shouldn't be all one way. So I really want to understand that, and I've had some managers who did that really, really effectively. So I've kind of stolen that from them.
Yeah, like it is a two-way street. Like I understand the manager who wants something out of me, but I also want to I will do whatever you want if you do whatever I need and to advance my career. So yeah, it is a two-way street. But yeah, no, that's good. Um, So you've been a manager for over a year now, or almost not even a year. How long have you been a manager?
Yeah, it's been less than a year at this point.
Okay, so what's the biggest challenge that you faced so far, and how did you overcome it? If you don't mind sharing.
So, yeah, it's a good question. Um, I'll be honest, like if I go back to when I started at Slack, I actually had a pretty challenging first 6 months, and the company was incredible. They do so much. I mean, the onboarding experience it is so streamlined and effective, and I really enjoyed it. But me personally, I think it was a really big jump. I had never worked at a true enterprise SaaS company, so there was a lot of things, more technical things in nature that I just, to be honest, didn't understand. So I had to really dig in there. So it took me a little bit longer to ramp up as an SE here at Slack. I thought the transition into my role was actually a little bit easier than I thought. Um, I think one, because I just had so much support from the team around the whole side, right? The leadership team on the SE side, on the sales side, and then also the folks who were on my team as well. But one of the challenges that I think and I still struggle with a little bit, is really knowing how to measure my success in this role and my effectiveness in the role. So as an IC, it's really it can be pretty simple, right? I kind of break it down into the deals that you're a part of, the impact that you've had on those deal cycles, the size of the deals, how much revenue you're helping bring in the door, and then I also think a big part of it is what you're giving back to the broader team, how you're helping grow the SE team and giving back. So in this new role, it's been a little bit more challenging to figure out, how do I measure that success as a manager, right? Because I think some people would say that your success is really dependent on how successful your team is. So I think that's one measure. Luckily, we've started to kick off our feedback cycle. So I have been getting some feedback from the team that's been really helpful, just helping me understand, things I'm doing well and areas of improvement. But I'm still trying to figure out like what that perfect formula is to understand how I'm being as effective as possible in this role.
Yeah, you just went from a player to a coach, and
Yeah.
coaches are measured differently. Like if the team loses, it's the coach's fault. If the team wins, it's the players. It's because of the players. So yeah, it's a tough spot to be in. I'd love to know how you, in the end, how you figure out what your success criteria are, if you want to share them at some point in the future.
Yeah, I think I'm still looking at. I mean, to me, right now, and this could change, but this may be consistent. Is it's really just the feedback from the team, right?
Right.
I think the team's happy. You mentioned just a few moments ago, when you're happy, you're your best self at work, and that's really what I want to make sure that I create this environment where people can be happy and kind of be their best self as they come in the door. So for me, I think that's one of the things that I'm using right now as a measure of success is the team happy? Do they kind of enjoy working with me? Do they feel like they're getting a lot back from me? And just taking it from there.
Yeah, I do think there's a thin line also between being happy and then being productive. Like if they're happy but they're not closing deals or not helping closing deals, that's like, it's a balance. So yeah, happiness is one thing. Happy and closing a deal is a better thing. And
Yeah, and I've been there, so I get it. I mean, I know when you're closing big deals, how exciting it is, and
yeah,
it's great. You get a lot of recognition, but you also just kind of build stronger bonds and camaraderie with the team that you also close that deal with. So that definitely adds to overall happiness.
yeah, for sure. So we discussed briefly, or we wanted to talk about prepping for SE summits. So I've been going to two summits, never an SE summit, and I always do not enjoy it because it's not made for a sales engineer. It's made for marketing people and account managers. How do you prepare a summit that's dedicated for SEs? If that's what you did I understand correctly? You
You did,
prepared a
yeah.
summit for SEs. All right. So how do you do that? How do you make sure that the SEs get the most out of their time away from the field, which everybody hates?
Yeah, and the summits that you're talking about, are those like sales kickoffs, or
Yeah.
what are you?
Yeah.
Okay.
They're mostly sales kickoffs.
Yeah, so we do both at Slack. So we'll usually do our sales kickoff in Q1. In the past few years, we've done an SE offsite, and it's incredible. So for me, the first time that I went, I was fairly new at Slack. I probably had only been there for 6 months, and what we do is we bring all SEs from across the globe. So the first time we did it, we had about 20 people and fly everyone in. We usually do it in San Francisco, which is where our headquarters is.
Okay.
And it's an incredible opportunity. I mean, it's a big investment, but incredible opportunity to get the team together. One, just help the team build relationships. I think you see, teams that have stronger relationships are just higher performing. So they're working more collaboratively. They feel more comfortable with each other. So it's a really good opportunity to build those relationships, but also just, as SEs, we work in a pretty fast moving environment. So on the company side, I mean, products are changing, you're rolling out new features. You want to understand how to go ahead and make sure that customers are getting the most value from them. But also the market's changing too, right? Our approach to how we work with customers is constantly changing. And we've seen that at Slack, since I've been here, the market dynamics have really changed in our approach of who we're selling to and who we're talking to has really changed pretty rapidly. So the SE offsite or the SE summit is just a great time to get everyone together and really just create alignment around like what really good looks like for our role. And so this year, to talk about the one that we just had, we had it back in November. And this time we had about a little over 50 people. When we started planning it, one of the things we did was just reach out to the team to say, hey, we're taking a few days out of the field. We want to understand, where do you guys want to spend some time digging in and learning about so that we can make the best use of your time. And so we got a lot of good feedback from the team. And then the leadership team basically started to create a agenda. So we did a 2.5-day offsite. The first and second day were pretty tactical. So looking at, different use cases that we've been talking about, sharing best practices for demoing Slack, and looking at, competition in our space. Now we talk about that in the field. And then I thought what was really cool was the last day we did a half day, and it was fully focused on just everyone's career. So it was all around SE careers. So we had a new matrix that we launched that was, for each role, what core competencies look like at Slack, just so it's really clear if you want to go from, an SE to a senior SE to a principal, like what are those skills that you need to have. And then we also had a few panels. So we had an IC panel. And again, we've had people move all over the organization. So we had someone go from SE leadership to be a sales rep. We had people go from the SE team to be a product manager. We had someone start up our value consulting team. So it was a good chance for folks who had moved roles to talk about, what their new role entails and how they like it, how they went through the process. And so I was on the leadership panel where it sounded a lot probably like the conversation that we're having today, but just good to get up in front of the team because we do have folks who are interested in getting into people leadership, and for them to hear a little bit about everyone's journey so that they can start to understand, when it would maybe make sense for them and how they can go about it.
So IC is individual contributor, right? Just to clarify.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so that seemed like when you ask people for feedback about what they want to see, I'm pretty sure for 50 people, like there might be different things that they want to see and during this session. How do you manage like making everybody happy and showing everybody what they want with such a limited amount of time?
Yeah, so it's funny. We actually didn't encounter too much of that when we were building out the agenda. So there's a lot of common themes around where people wanted to dig in. I think where we actually saw that the most was once we wrapped up our summit, we sent out a survey and got back some feedback from the team. And so luckily at the high level, everyone was really satisfied. It was on a scale of 1 to 5 was one of the questions, how effective, or, do you think this was a good use of your time? And I think we had about 85% of the team say that it was a 5 out of 5, and the rest say it was a 4 out of 5. So overall, very successful. But once we got into some of the specific feedback, I think one of the challenges that we had, especially having a growing team, we've had people who have been at Slack for about 3+ years. And so trying to hit those topics at the right altitude, I think was really the challenge for us. So you have people who have been here, have seen it, know it inside out. And then you have people who just started last week,
right,
and trying to deliver content that resonates for everyone equally was a little bit of a challenge. So I think it's something that, as we start to look towards next year, we'll try to figure out a solution so that we can make sure that it's effective for people who have been in seat for a while, but also for some of the newer folks who just came in the door.
So is it one session for everybody, or did you split it up into smaller sessions for advanced and medium?
Yeah, so this year it was one large session. So we had a pretty big conference room at Slack HQ
Okay.
that fit about all 50 plus of us.
Wow. Okay. That's an interesting way of doing it.
Yeah.
It's
But next year, you're right. Like next year, it may make sense to break it down by folks who have been here a little longer. And there's give and take on both. Like having some of the folks who have been here for a long time sit next to people who just came in and talk about the same thing and share their experience. Like that's really powerful. So there is some value in that.
yeah. Like here's an idea. I don't know if this is the right form for it, but maybe you can split like the advanced people lead, like divide the 50 people into groups, with the team captain being like been there for a while, and they can do their own mini sessions like as a collaborative team, and then come up with a demo or a case study. Again, this is not the right form for it, but it gets me excited to think
No,
about it.
I'm always open to taking advice and talking about this stuff. And I definitely think you're spot on. Like we did that where, for almost every session, we'd have a breakout where people went back because again, that time together is really the value of bringing people across the globe into one place.
Yeah.
There's no replacement for that face-to-face time. So I think where maybe we should have spent a little more time was focusing on, layering folks when we were creating those breakout teams a
Yeah.
little bit. So, I mean, that's a great point. I think you're spot on.
Yeah, for me personally, so I mentioned I don't enjoy those sales kickoff meetings, but the one thing I benefit out of that is meeting other SEs who've been there for a while. So yeah, like you guys are ahead of the curve. My company has been around for 80 years, and we still don't do that.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, it is a massive investment. Like you mentioned, like we were out of the field as a team collectively for almost a full week.
Yeah.
Right. Because especially if folks flying from Japan and even going East Coast to West Coast,
Yeah.
you're layering in some days of travel there. And it's something where, if you look at it on paper and you crunch the numbers, it may not make a lot of sense because it's expensive. We're taking people out of their core roles. But I think when you look at the long-term impact, it has a massive, massive positive effect on people. So it's something that we're pretty passionate about, and we'll keep doing.
Yeah, that's a very good idea. For bigger companies like my company, there'd be more like 1,000 SEs.
Oh wow!
Yeah, so maybe that's why it's not feasible. So, all right, you mentioned like you have old people, you have new people. How do you pick? So the people are already hired; they're hired. How do you make sure that the people joining the team fit within the team culture, the knowledge, and they can actually add to the team within a short period of time?
Yeah, so you're talking about just when we're out, we're recruiting and
Yeah.
hiring.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's been really cool. Part of the new role for me is to actually get more ingrained in the hiring and interviewing process. I think there's a couple things that we look at. So one is definitely diversity. So it's diversity of background, but also diversity of where folks are coming from. We don't just want to hire every SE from another similar company and just bring them over and have them all do the same thing that they used to do.
Right.
So I think we've done a really nice job of bringing a pretty diverse set of backgrounds to Slack, because I think what we're starting to see is I look at it like the dream team or the all-star team. Like we're ideally taking the best people from everywhere else and bringing them over to Slack, and then sharing all of those best practices, and also figuring out just how it fits within the context of Slack. So I think diversity is one big one that I look at when we're hiring. Where are there different skills that maybe we don't have on the team? You mentioned engineers using Slack. We actually don't really have anyone who has like a developer and engineering background or even came from any of those companies at Slack today on the SE team. So again, that's an area where, potentially if we do find someone who comes from one of those companies that creates products that are pretty geared towards developers, like that would be a great fit at Slack right now. But I think more importantly for me, as we talk about interviewing and hiring, is there was a quote in one of our Slack blog posts that says, the two things that a company really creates is the product that they sell and then the culture that they build internally. And for me, that culture is just so critically important. I mean, I think we've done a really nice job. This is the first time where we actually have an office, and today I'm actually in my home office because we're heading into the holidays. But I do go to the office quite a bit and just really enjoy it because I love being around the people that we have there. And one thing that we've done to help identify like how do we know someone's going to be a good fit at Slack is we have our 4 Slack attributes. And so those are, we look for people that are smart, hardworking, humble, and collaborative. And so having all 4 of those is actually fairly rare. Like I think you'll see people who have other skills or have 3 out of the 4 or 2 out of the 4, but it's those 4 all together that I think really creates this kind of like, you know, the person who's going to be able to come into Slack and really just thrive at Slack. So as we're going through the hiring interview process, that's part of our matrix that we'll look at is making sure that people are smart, humble, hardworking, collaborative.
I'm writing that down. Smart, humble, uh, collaborative,
And hardworking.
So how do you measure that? Like, you're meeting me for the first time, I can fake it until you think that I am smart, humble, collaborative, and hardworking. Um, and even throughout the interview, if you ask me for homework, because I'm looking for a job, I go do the extra mile and do the homework that you want to the best of my abilities, which I will never repeat again while I'm working. How do you know that this person you're talking to is smart, humble, collaborative, and hardworking?
Yeah, and we don't have we don't have a 7-round or a 9-round interview process where you really are getting to know people at a pretty deep level. But I do think we have a pretty strong hiring and interviewing process. So one of the rounds of interviewing at Slack is, we'll sit down and we'll kind of go through a candidate's resume, start to finish. And there's some very specific questions that we'll ask that I think help us make a better determination if these folks do kind of fit all of those boxes. And again, it's not an exact science. So, I think we do as best we can. So that's part of it. And also just pure conversation. So when people do come in and interview at Slack, typically they will meet with someone who's a peer, whether it's another SE or if it's an AE that they'd be working with. And then through those conversations, people end to like show their true colors. So if there really is like a wolf in sheep's clothing and they come in and fool us, then maybe that could happen. I don't think it's happened yet. We've been really fortunate with our hiring and success there.
Nice. So you don't have the question was that I was thinking about that I lost for a second. Are you looking for experienced SEs, or can someone who's not been an SE ever in their life get into an SE role at Slack?
So currently we actually haven't hired anyone at Slack and the SE team that doesn't have experience. I obviously started my SE career without any experience and just launched into it. I think like most SEs, I didn't even know sales engineering was a profession.
Yep.
I think, and I hear a lot of funny stories about people that become sales engineers. I just heard one from someone on our team that started at Oracle, and she was saying the first day she was actually brand new, just had graduated college.
Okay.
They got into a room and they said, okay, if you're going to be an SDR, which is a sales development rep, more of a AE path,
yep.
You go to the left side of the room. If you're a sales engineer, you go to the right side of the room. And she just raised her hand and goes, "What one am I today?" And really had no idea. Like I had never heard sales engineer until I got into that room. So I think that's really common. And so I'd love to see us get to a place where we do hire folks who don't have sales engineering experiences. Companies like Oracle and SAP, and there's a lot of others, bring in SEs with no experience and have really good associate SE and training programs. So it's something we've talked about at Slack. I think Slack would be a great environment for that, so I'm a big proponent of it. But I think we need to wait until we're at the right point in time. And our SE team is really small still. Like I mentioned, we're still only around 50 SEs globally.
Yep, that's very small.
Yeah, and one of the smaller ones that I've been a part of. So I think we need to grow and mature a little bit, but I do look forward to a day where we can start to bring on some new SEs.
Yeah, I believe there is a benefit to hiring like experienced SEs, but there's also a big benefit to hiring SEs who've never had an experience as SEs, because experienced SEs come in with their own baggage, their own way of doing things, and in some cases they might not be as malleable as you'd want. Whereas brand new SEs, you can teach them how to be proper SEs from the get-go. But it works better if there's a team around them, not a remote SE.
Yeah, and that's where I think we mentioned, we have pretty large hubs of SEs, so in that environment it actually would work out really well. But we also see we have some folks who don't have much SE experience, so maybe 1 or 2 years, but they actually had experience as an AE or as a AE being account executive, more on the sales side, or a customer success manager who's more on the post sales side, helping companies, mature their adoption of a tool.
Yeah.
Some of them are some of the best SEs that we have because they do have full perspective. Myself, I worked as an account exec for a year, and so I think that gives me a lot of empathy for my sales counterparts. I think I heard you took a similar leap.
Yes. Yep. We'll leave it at that.
Yeah. But I think those are good, right? It's good
Yeah.
when you really understand what the people that you work with every day are going through, what their role actually entails, and I think it creates stronger, stronger working relationships when you're in the field.
It definitely helped me become a better SE when I learned what a sales guy does, because I learned what I need to do to get the ball to the account manager in a place where he can actually do something with it, versus like here there versus a drop ball because we didn't know what to do. All right. So how do you find your SEs right now? Are you do you put out job postings, or is it through networking events, or is it a combination of both? How do you do that?
Yeah, so I think so far we've been really fortunate to really leverage our network. So we've had a lot of referrals at Slack, which has been really helpful. But yeah, we also do have job postings. So I mean, almost at all times we're hiring on the SE team at Slack. So there's typically always a job posting up. And I mean, I know as a hiring manager, I mean, I literally do go through every resume that gets submitted. That said, a resume that just comes in through our talent portal is definitely different than one that gets maybe sent directly to me, or one that gets passed along by someone that I know and trust. So those are kind of the ways that we've been starting to do it. And we also do a lot of kind of outbound recruiting. So it's funny, like if you think about some of the most top performing SEs, they typically don't want to leave. Like they're very, very happy. They're very well taken care of at the companies that they're at. So recruiting and hiring does actually turn into a bit more of a selling motion for us, where we are, I mean, I have some very long-standing conversations with people who, I'm really hopeful at some point will say, hey, now's the time. I'm really excited to come over to Slack.
Yeah.
But for the current point in time, I mean, they're just, whether it's they're compensated incredibly well, or they're just really fulfilled with their role and they have a lot of career growth at the company that they're at. But we're kind of keeping a lot of those lines of communications open so that we can bring in the best folks on board here at Slack.
Yeah. So if someone says no today, doesn't mean you're just gonna cut ties. You're gonna nurture that relationship so that at some point they change their mind.
Yeah,
You're
definitely.
the first one on their brain.
Yeah, and that's what you hope for. Personally, I love talking to other SEs. I was really excited to chat with you today, but I love just going to different events and meeting other SEs. It's something that like the SE profession is starting to really grow and get more awareness. I mean, thanks to podcasts like yours and other assets that are out there. So, I always love just even reaching out to folks and saying, hey, this isn't even part of our recruiting. I just, have heard great things about you and just want to have a conversation, understand like what you're doing that's so great, and maybe I can learn a little bit from it.
Yeah. And for you can always invite them to the SENY meetups, right? You're part of that, correct?
I am, yeah. So so now's probably a good time to plug the SENY.
Yeah, I plug it all the time, but go ahead.
But it's incredible, yeah. So about a year and a half ago, a few of us created this group, Sales Engineers in New York, and it was actually the first time it came to me was I was talking to a good friend of mine, Sam Pena. We've mentioned him a few times on the podcast, but we were talking about it internally. I talked to one of our leaders at Slack, and he's a big member of the SE meetup group out in San Francisco that's really large. It's been around for a long time. And, I was like, I don't think there's anything like that in New York. And Sam and I were doing a bit of research, and we found there was a few people who were just starting to kick one off. And we met up with them, Akshat, G, and Owen, and just sat down and said, hey, we'd love to be a part of this, help grow it. And it's just been incredible. We've had some really successful events, and the group has now grown to about 400 people, which is pretty large. And honestly, there's still a lot of folks who we need to get involved here.
So I talked to Akshat. So Akshat's been on the show. Sam's been on the show. Now you're on the show. I've talked to Akshat like maybe in the spring, and he said, or no, last around September, no, yeah, in the spring, and he mentioned that you've grown to around 350, and now I'm talking to you a few months later, you've grown to 400, which is
Yeah.
amazing. Like SEs should take advantage of that. And I know people who are not in New York travel to New York to be part of that meetup.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
So
pretty cool. It's becoming a new tourist destination, I guess. When you come to New York, you can come to the SENY meetups.
yeah,
But it's really, I mean, for me, I've gotten so much out of this group. I actually started. I was on one of the panels that we had probably almost a year ago, and just an incredible environment. Again, to just meet other SEs from New York, from all types of companies, but also a lot of aspiring SEs. We actually just had. One of the first folks who came to one of our initial meetups, he was a software developer at a large bank and was really interested in getting into sales engineering, and through the meetups ended up doing some networking, and just landed his first role as an SE. So great recruiting environment, but also a great networking environment and just a really good learning environment.
nice, awesome. So yeah, like people, if you're in the New York area or close by, when's your next meetup?
So we're planning it right now. It'll likely be in mid-January is what we're shooting for.
Okay, so if you're in New York in mid-January, make sure you go to the SE meetup. Um, I heard lots of great things. The information there during the panels is amazing. I'd love to attend at some point, so I'll try to do that.
We would love to have you down and have you, I think a great topic would be interviewing SEs or launching your podcast. There's a lot that we can
Yeah,
get from you coming to one of our events.
yeah. I'll have to figure that out with the family and the work, and just let me know when, and I'll try to work it out.
Great.
All right. Well,
Uh, and again, so if people are looking for that, it's salesengineersny.com.
yeah,
Once you go there, there's a meetup group, and hopefully we can throw some of this in the show notes.
yeah.
There's a
It'll
meetup
be in the
group.
show notes for sure. I already noted that. So, Better Up SENY and Sam. So Sam Pena also has a blog. So it's going to be linked in the show notes as well. Show 89, so close to 90. So yeah,
My new lucky number, 89.
yeah,
And then there's also a Slack workspace where you're a part of it. So
yes, I
thank you
am.
for communicating over the SENY Slack workspace a little bit, because I hate email, so I appreciate that. And that has been another great environment where we see people coming in. One of the things that happens when you join that is you'll get kind of a welcome note from the SENY founders, and it encourages you to go into our main channel, introduce yourself. There's a jobs channel in there, which is a pretty hot channel. So
Yeah,
pretty cool to see that come to life.
yeah. No, it's a very good resource, and people ask questions on there. So yeah, join that. Make sure you join that. And anything else you want to say before we go?
No, I think that's it. I mean, this was great. I enjoyed talking with you. Hopefully there's some valuable nuggets in here. But just really appreciate the time. And again, to you, Ramsey, like, I know that this isn't your full-time job, so I appreciate all the time and effort you put into it above and beyond everything else. I mean, for me, when I started in sales engineering back, in 2012, 2013, like, really wish I had some resources like this and the blog and the meetup group. So it's cool to see some of that available for folks who are interested in getting in the field.
Yeah, well, that's the reason I started the website, and that's the reason you guys started SENY as well, right?
Yep.
Awesome.
Exactly.
All right, man. I will catch you later. Thank you.
All right. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much for listening in. Eric also wanted to share his LinkedIn. So it will be in the show notes at actually it is in the show notes at wetheSalesEngineers.com/show89. Or you can just reach out to him on linkedin.com/ or /ln or in, can't even tell anymore with LinkedIn, /Glick Eric, or just, search for Eric Glick on LinkedIn. He works for Slack. He's easy to find. So make sure you let him know that you heard him on this show. That, like, when you send a connection request, make sure you tell him that you're an SE or you want to be an SE and you heard him on this show, just so he will not ignore you. So thank you, Eric, for coming on. And for everybody who has listened to any amount of time in 2019, thank you again so much for being part of the SE Nation. I hope that I can chat with you in person and help you achieve your goals. I've already talked about the road to sales engineering. If that's something that's interesting to you, please reach out. on my email, ramsey@wethesalesengineers.com. If there's anything else that you think of that you could use either as service or like just anything, this website is meant to be for you, not for me. So if it's useful for you, I'm really happy to do it. So please reach out again. I look forward to chatting in the new year. With that, this is Ramsey signing off.